making the assumption that you know everything is the height of arrogance. And when somebody makes that assumption, they are on the path down. If you're not willing to accept and learn and listen, how can you expect that you will evolve and adapt and remain relevant?
Welcome to Biotech Bytes. I am your host, Steve Swan. Biotech Bytes, we chat with folks about technology, typically their thoughts and feelings around technology within biotech. However, today I'm joined by Michael Krigsman. He's runs and owns a podcast, 𝐃𝐨𝐧'𝐭 Talk, and we're going to be taking a little bit of a twist today. We're going to be doing more along the lines of communications, storytelling, and how to get your message effectively across as a leader. So, Michael, thank you for joining us.
Steve, it's my honor and pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. Thank you. And hopefully Boston's treating you well. I know you're up in Boston, and that's where I grew up in Rhode Island, and I went to school in Boston. So real excited to be talking to somebody from up in Boston. And let's see what the Red Sox do here coming into the trade deadline. Fingers are crossed.
Sounds good.
So I always like to start with my guests to kind of give my audience a foundation into the individual, my guest, right? So give me a little background as to, where you started and where you came from and what got you into, helping folks effectively communicate.
So I am the host of the 𝐃𝐨𝐧'𝐭 Talk video podcast. We've done over 800 episodes at this point. Our guests are senior leaders from the largest companies in the world. I got into this because about 10 years ago, I was a advisory consultant and I worked for many of the largest enterprise software companies, and I advised them on marketing, messaging, positioning. And I had this idea thinking, this video thing seems like it might be a good idea. And so I started this live video podcast. At the time, there was nobody else doing this really in the enterprise. One thing led to another. And as I said, we've done about, over 800 episodes, and our guests read like a who's who of the Fortune 500.
And I think one of the things that you had mentioned to me when we first spoke was, you can even relate to the IT folks that we tend to talk to, because you started as a wee young spudling back in the day as a PM, right? As an IT PM, some sort.
Well, I ran a company back in the 90s, and SAP at that time was one of our very largest customers. So I worked very closely with SAP, figuring out better ways to implement ERP software. And a large portion of that was project management. So I have a very, very strong grounding in project management. I also have a very strong grounding in advising CIOs. Our focus now with 𝐃𝐨𝐧'𝐭 Talk is on leadership, enterprise AI, and the digital economy. But for a very long time, the focus was digital transformation. And so I have, and I've written a tremendous amount. So my relationship with CIOs and advising CIOs goes back many years.
Oh, great. Good. Well, so, most of the folks, as you may have seen, are CIOs, right, within biotech that we chat with. And a lot of it is around AI and so on and so forth. And, some of the folks talk about the tools. A lot of the folks talk about, the individual people, the messaging, things like that. And I think that's more along the lines of what you and I will hit on, obviously, today. Tell me, I guess, just kind of the big thing, the big picture. What do you see, right? So with our leaders, a lot of the folks I'm talking to are mid-market. A lot of the folks you speak with are, large company folks or bigger company folks, higher than mid-market. What do you see as, I guess, could we say the difference between, jumping from one to the other, or some of those individuals, right? What would be your thoughts around, hey, if I'm in mid-market, if I wanted to make the jump, or if I want to think about getting to the next level, is there something that I need to do or change or think about going forward as I continue my networking process?
If you want to make the jump from being a smaller company, working at a smaller company, to a larger company, or being CIO, of a smaller organization and wanting to go to a larger one, I think the first step is to be absolutely great at what you do.
Sure.
This seems pretty clear to me. Right? Establishing operational excellence at your organization. And at the most basic level, that means just making sure that the systems work, that your security is locked down, that you're not having breaches, that the email is working. I mean, these are kind of basic aspects that you have a handle on your budgeting. So I think that is number one. Number two is think of a stepping stone strategy. And so for me, that might translate into try to become for example, a regional CIO. So don't expect to make the leap from being the CIO of a smaller organization to being the global CIO of IBM, for example. But IBM has many CIOs. I shouldn't pick on IBM. Large companies very often have many different CIOs covering parts of the business. So I would look for a larger company that is in a business, an industry, a space that you really understand well. And then within that larger company, try to identify the business unit, the product line, the geography, whatever it might be that you think you can add real value to. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so as a strategy, I would think about it that way.
Now, what about, we hear a lot about the mentors, right? I mean, in your time and with all the folks you've spoken with, is that something that half the people think about? 3/4 of the people? Do you think 100% of the individuals that have gone from here to here all had mentors or all are in mentorship programs? Where do you think that falls? Where does that lie?
I think in general, having a mentor is extremely valuable. Somebody to show you the ropes, who can give you practical advice that you can be honest with and straightforward with. I would say try to hook up with folks who are in the target that you hope to achieve. So if you're at a smaller company and say, for example, you're working inside IT, you're not yet CIO, find a CIO either inside your company or somewhere else, folks that you can speak with to give you advice. If you're CIO of a small company and you want to go to work for a larger company, find somebody in a larger company to give you advice. I think the idea of mentorship is extremely important.
Yeah, it seems like it is. I talk to my kids about it a lot, but I mean, even seasoned professionals, every great hitter needed a batting coach all the way through his career, right? So
I can tell you for myself, I have been successful in large part because I listen carefully and I take advice well, and I'm not shy about seeking out advice. So I don't think, I think sometimes we have this kind of macho culture where people feel they shouldn't ask for advice because it's a sign of weakness. I look at it the other way. I look at it as asking for advice is a sign of confidence, a sign of confidence that you feel the basic elements of what you do are solid and in place, and you're confident enough that you can ask for help. Or maybe the basic elements aren't in place, but you're confident enough that with the right advice or guidance, you can change.
Yeah, I've read stories that even I was reading recently, I think it was the CEO of Microsoft and the CEO of Google. They both have folks that they talk to that are their coaches, right? And one of them, I think it was the CEO of Microsoft. One of his coaches is an ex-college football coach, right? And helps him to, move along. And one of his big pieces of advice was not making a decision is the worst thing. Make a decision. It sends you in a direction. Right or wrong, you'll find out if you can't figure it out, but you got to make the decision and move, that kind of thing.
I was just talking with a friend of mine just a couple of days ago who is an executive at a very large pharma company. And he's kind of unsure about whether he wants to stay at this company and so forth. And he was telling me about conversations that he has with his executive coach.
Yeah. You can't be so arrogant to think you don't need one, right?
I think the arrogance, or let me put it this way. I think making the assumption that you know everything is the height of arrogance. And when somebody makes that assumption, they are on the path down.
Right. Right.
Or they have plateaued and reached their level as far as how can you, if you're not willing to accept and learn and listen, how can you expect that you will evolve and adapt and remain relevant
and grow? Right. Yeah, exactly.
And grow. Exactly. Precisely.
Now, part of that, right? Part of that growth, part of that communication with that coach, part of that articulation with them is communication, right? So, and some of the folks that we know, I'm sure there's definitely a lot of them, used to be behind the keyboard, right? They were technologists, and, being good at what they did, like you recommended, got them recognized, right? So then, okay, hey, do you want to manage? Do you want to lead? And then they'll start growing, right? But communication sometimes gets left behind. I do a lot of time listening to and reading Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger, right? Warren Buffett talks about Dale Carnegie, which I don't think it's around anymore. Dale Carnegie, a school of communication where he would go and give presentations and things to get his communication skills honed. Anything along those lines that you have heard of, recommend, know of, where some folks can get involved with, maybe they could take a college course, right? And give presentations. I don't know. I'm just trying to throw out ideas, trying to brainstorm here. Anything that comes to mind?
There is Toastmasters.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So I think that has a very good reputation. And I believe Dale Carnegie is still around because I think really? that I interviewed their CEO on CXO Talk years and years ago.
Oh, that's very cool. I had no idea. I just think, I don't know. I'm just thinking of Warren Buffett, right? And thinking he's old school. So I figured, Dale Carnegie's got to be gone. Really? I didn't even Google it, didn't even Google it. Uh-huh. So Toastmasters, you think?
I think Toastmasters has a really, really good reputation. But I think part of it also is just putting yourself in a position to practice. So give presentations and learn. And, online now, there's so much information.
Yeah. Because eventually, as a leader, you're going to be, asked to speak in front of groups, board of directors, investors, things like that. So you probably want to do your practice before you get to that. That's not where you want to learn. That's not where you can learn.
No, it's definitely not where you want to learn. I mean, before you go speak to a potentially business changing or business altering or even life altering presentation or group, you want to be pretty clear about what you're presenting, why you're presenting it, and how you're going to make that presentation based on practice, experience, and the advice of other people and the feedback. And I also recommend, by the way, if you're talking about presentations, get a speech coach. I had one in the past.
Really? I didn't even know that existed.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There are really good ones out there, too.
Are there things you could point at that were particular successes, right, when it came to communication that individuals had, or things that were failures where folks might want to avoid or make sure that they avoid when it comes to, either learning how to communicate or actually communicating, as they're doing their thing? Is there anything that we should think about on the plus or minus side of that we should go towards or not go towards?
Yeah, I think that the most successful communicators are folks who have a very clear understanding of what the audience wants and needs from them. So, for example, if you are making a budget pitch to your boss or to a budget committee, having a firm understanding of the budget elements. Again, as I was saying earlier, some of this seems pretty obvious, but it's Sometimes we forget the obvious. So having a firm understanding of the budget items that you're within your control. Okay. That's number one. Having a very clear, firm understanding of the business trajectory. This is trickier. Where is the business strategy headed for this year? How does your budget support those business goals? See, these are the kind of questions I think that you need to start asking. What is the nature of who are you speaking with? What is their background? How technical should you be? Are you speaking to a bunch of peers who are nerds and geeks, programmers, developers, technical leaders? Then the expectation will be that there's going to be discussion of the technology aspects. Are you speaking to the board of directors? If you're speaking to the board of directors, they're going to want things really boiled down in a simple way without a lot of detail, but also making clear that you have a grasp of the subject sufficiently so that they have confidence in what you're saying.
Right. And in my mind, as you were talking about all that, knowing your audience, right, and who you're talking to almost goes hand in hand. And some people may not think about it this way. I just have been with being a good listener, right? Because when you're a good listener, you understand your audience and you know how to articulate to that individual or individuals. It's the same as knowing your audience when you're getting up to give a presentation, right? It's you were a good researcher and you're being a good listener, responding to who's in front of you.
Yeah, I think that word listening is pretty interesting because it's multidimensional. Because on the one hand, in the moment, yes, you need to be very carefully listening and parsing to what the person in front of you is saying. Go beyond that. While they're in front of you, what are their expectations of you? What's their body language? What's the vibe? Are they warm towards you? Are they nodding their head in violent agreement? Yes, they agree with you, and therefore the path you're on is right. Are they kind of, shaking their head? No. These are subtle cues, sometimes not so subtle, but sometimes the cues are subtle. And that can help give you, right in the moment, information to help you course correct and adjust what you're saying, how you're saying it, how you're presenting it to better suit their needs. So you will be more persuasive. But even beyond that, listening means before you go into that meeting, doing the research so you know who you're talking to. What do they care about? What is their history of making decisions? All of this will help you shape your presentation. But even more importantly, if we continue to delve, if I can use one of these Gen AI terms that comes up all the time, if we can delve into the question of listening even further, it means going further back upstream to the business strategy, having an understanding of, as I said before, where is the business going? What is leadership's expectations? And how do you fit into that? So this notion of listening, you can look at on many different levels. And I can tell you the most successful executives and business leaders that I know, they do look at it at all of these levels, and they're very accomplished at doing so.
Yeah. So it's, so just coming into a presentation of some sort as an IT professional and just hammering away on what the tool's going to look like. No, that's not how you want to do this. Right. You want to think about, like you said, the business objectives. I call them helicopter skills, right? You got to be able to understand the technology, right? And what those folks are doing, because we're technology professionals. Then helicoptering up to the next level, roadmap, strategy, again, understanding the business. Then all the way up to the next level, board, C-level, really understanding this, but at a 30,000 foot level, and being able to articulate and explain it like that. That's kind of, when I talk to folks, it's kind of how I try to explain. And again, I'm doing that just for my little head because I like to simplify everything. I like to put things in buckets, and I like to just make things real digestible for myself. So, but I think that the IT leader that just goes to the shiny new object and stuff, that's not going to fly.
Well, no, again, it depends on the context. So, for example, if the meeting is about the shiny new object, then obviously you need to talk about the shiny new object. If the meeting is about the business goals and how can we support marketing or whatever it might be, then the shiny new object is a device to help you get there. It's a tool. And if you talk with somebody who's building a house, right? Say you're a contractor and or a carpenter, you're going to sell your services to new homeowners. They need a kitchen. You're not going to spend a lot of time talking about the 3 different kinds of hammers that you can bring. And you have 12 different kinds of nails for all these different purposes. Now that's impressive, but not that useful to the homeowner who wants to know, okay, do you have the skills to do this? Can you do it within my budget? Do you have the free time in your schedule? Do you understand my goals? And will you reliably follow my directions and the blueprints?
Right.
You see, now if we're having a conversation about hammers and nails, that's a different story.
Sure.
Oh, I know about 10 different kinds of nails.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So it all depends on context. And this is part of the listening that we were talking about earlier, which is understanding the context.
Sure. Yeah. Yep. I have my daughter who's 21, just finishing up data science school, right?
Uh-huh.
One more year. And she always talks about she learned her Python, she learned her Java, and to use your example, I told her you got to learn what the tools are. You got to learn about the hammer and nail, right? Before you go and talk to the homeowner about how you can help solve their problems. So I would always tell her, you got to learn how to crawl before you walk. You got to understand what the tools are here. Then you can go, because she's like, I don't want to be behind closed doors programming. And I said, no, you won't. Get in front of business, understand what they need and what they want, and then work with them. You understand what the tools are. You understand what the hammer and nails are, but understand what the different cabinets would do or look like, or what the needs are there, those kinds of things. It's real analogous to that in my mind,
Yeah. I mean, look, if you are selling yourself as a programmer, you need to be really good at programming, but the focus is not the programming. The focus is the end result. What are you programming and why, and what's the business outcome? And that's really the most important thing. And most of the time.
Yeah. And again, to go back to that example, she would tell me that, the kids going into class would always talk about their runtime for their programs and things. And she's more wants to talk about, what did we get done with that program? What, okay, it went fast, right? But that's great that it went fast, but did it get done what it needed to get done? It could be the fastest thing in the world, but if it didn't get to your end goal, it doesn't matter. So, we're going through that. She got one more year and she'll be fine. So it's just a matter of convincing her that she's not going to be sitting in a closet programming all day long. Because I said, if you're doing that, then you could be anywhere in the world and they could pay somebody a lot less to do that halfway around the world. So you won't be doing that.
Yeah, I think this brings in the question of judgment.
Yeah.
It's not just that you know the technical skills, you have the technical skills, but it's having the judgment to apply those skills to the business context.
Yeah. And and again, to learn what the business wants and needs and how to listen to them and to hear the right cues, you got to get that exposure and you got to work your way up there, So
exactly.
It's just a matter of all that. So, all right. Well, cool. I appreciate this. I think my audience really needs to hear this, listen to this, think about this. And if nothing else, ask the questions, to themselves. Look at yourself in the mirror and say, hey, how am I communicating? What do I need to do? Because when I get somebody ready for an interview, I never tell them, we never talk about exactly what someone's going to ask, answer like this. I have them ask the questions as to what someone's looking for. And then let's talk about what you can do as far as what the goals and priorities are in that role. The way I like to phrase it is I get folks ready to look in the mirror and understand how they're being perceived, and so that in the interview process, it's that give and take, listening and then responding appropriately. Right.
Yeah. Having empathy for the person who is interviewing you, listening carefully. If the person is a business person, then you need to talk in business terms rather than technology jargon.
Right. Right.
And this is really hard for technical people, is to talk about what they do in straightforward, simple terms that somebody who is a non-technologist will understand.
And I'm sure this is not going to come as any surprise to you, Michael. I can't tell you how many times I've been doing this 25 years, technology to biotech. How many times I get a call saying, that person was great. We cannot put them in front of business. Business will shake their head and walk out of the room because they'll wonder what kind of answer they're really getting. They won't understand what they're saying. And no matter, most of the time, in the amount of time that I'm working with somebody over the course of, say, 6-8 weeks, not enough time to coach that out of somebody. You know what I mean? It's innate a lot of the time, but they've got to really recognize it, look at it in the mirror, face it, and really try and tackle it. And there's some that want to do that. There's some that don't, but I think this is something they need to hear.
Yeah. I mean, it's up to each person what they want to do, where they want to go. Some people just simply want to be in a technical role and that's it. But if you want to be a C-level leader in a mid-sized company or a large company, sooner or later, you need to really get a handle on both the technology, which you probably already are very good at, as well as the business dynamics. And I can absolutely tell you that the best business people or the best senior leaders that I know, whether CIOs, chief data officers, chief technology officers, whoever it might be, the best of them absolutely are excellent understanding the technology and equally excellent understanding the business. And I would say that as an absolute.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Yeah. And I've met some of those folks too, right? So, we'll sit down, we'll have an hour-long conversation. 56 minute of it is about the business, delivering as a biotech, delivering the research, the drugs to the patient, so on and so forth. The last couple of minutes might be about the tool or the technology, or at least touching on it. And, when I have those conversations, I'll be honest with you, I feel like my IQ raises 2 or 3 points because these folks educate me on different angles of the business and different things that I didn't know, but they became experts in it. Right. And they know how to articulate that. So it's good stuff,
Well, if you are, think about it this way. If you're speaking with somebody who is running a product line, for example, at a pharma company, whatever, whether a big one or a small one, what is their primary concern? Their primary concern is the efficacy of the material, okay, of the medication they're developing or the molecule, and their ability to make it through the regulatory process, get it into the market, and make a profit, right? That's what they care about. And if you're the CIO, what they want and expect from you is to provide the technology and the infrastructure needed to streamline that process to the extent that's possible.
Right. Make it as efficient as you can.
And how you go about doing it, they will make the assumption that as the CIO, you know how to do that you will conduct the research, you have the background, you'll do the due diligence, whatever is necessary to find the right tools, to find the right infrastructure, to integrate the pieces appropriately.
Right.
And yes, they'll want to know what those tools are, but the main point of conversation and focus most of the time is going to be, how is this going to help me develop the molecule and get it out into the market through that long and expensive process?
And make money, right? Like you said, that's the bottom line, right? And
yes,
and we have companies, and this is just me talking, right? But a potential CIO, being a good listener, knowing their audience, doing their homework, would know, as I would too, through talking to these folks, where they are in their life cycle, right? Do they need somebody more focused on the sales piece? Are they about to go commercial, right? Do they need somebody more focused on the research side, R&D? Do they need somebody more foundational that can build up their internal infrastructure, desktops, phones, lights, whatever, So there's many, many, many different kinds. But again, it comes from, like you said earlier, listening, right? Research, listening, knowing your audience, that kind of thing. So it's all good. Yeah. So now, so my folks can look you up on CXO Talk, right? Podcast. That's your podcast. And they can look at some of these things and see who you've spoken to and kind of get some, a read on how some of these folks communicate, right?
Yes. Go to 𝐶𝐸𝐽𝐿.com. We do live shows. During our live shows, there is a tweet chat, and we often stream to LinkedIn. And you can actually ask questions of the guests. I mean, it's actually a tremendous opportunity for the people listening to interact very directly with the senior execs from the largest companies in the world. I mean, really, it's the top execs from the biggest companies in the world. And we create a forum where everybody can come together and you can ask your questions and they will answer.
What a great resource. That's awesome. And I don't know anybody that couldn't at least, gain something, learn something about their swing, a little bit something about their swing to figure out whether, what they need to do or something they need to tweak, right? So.
That is for sure. I mean, just go to cxotalk.com, sign up for our newsletter, and we'll notify you of the upcoming shows.
Cool. I have one final question I ask of everybody, and I ask each guest this. So, and I didn't prompt you on this or anything like that. And if you watch my podcast, maybe you've seen it, maybe you haven't. Live music. I love live music. I like bands. I like music in general. So I always like asking my folks because it kind of strips it down, right? It kind of gives you a raw question that someone's not ready for, and it gives them a little, gives the audience a little taste as to the individual that I'm talking to. Do you have any bands, either A, that you like seeing live or that you've ever seen live, that you could recall, or anything that you would say, hey, that was the best concert I ever saw? And if there aren't, there aren't. But I always like asking folks that.
Oh, I went to a concert at Berklee School of Music because, of course, here I am in Boston.
Sure.
Not too long ago, and I don't remember the guy's name. I learned about him on TikTok. I love TikTok, and I get a lot of new artists to listen to from TikTok. Lamont something. Lamont, I wish I could remember his name. And he is this soul singer, and he sings these like rhythm and blues. I mean, the guy is brilliant.
Really?
I love TikTok. I mean, there are so many brilliant artists. This is not directly answering your live question, but
yeah, it's all right.
I say go to TikTok and find music. There are such talented, incredible people who
you can get exposed to a lot of stuff there. Yeah, absolutely. I like seeing new bands too. It's fun. I mean, it's great to see the stuff you like and know and trust, but at the same time, to pick up some new stuff is always fun. Cool. Well, Michael. Thank you very much. It was great having you. This is a change of pace for me and for my audience, and I think it's something that they'll really enjoy.
Great. Well, Steve, thank you for inviting me. It's been really a pleasure.